There's not much of a story here, but I feel compelled to type this anyways. I was looking around on YouTube to see if the AVGN, the Angry Video Game Nerd, had made any new episodes. The only one on the James Nintendo Nerd channel was Ghosts and Goblins. For whatever reason lately he's been releasing brand new ones on YouTube as opposed to usually releasing them on game trailers, so I watched it. It was the same kind of funny madness you'd expect to see in a nerd episode, not perfect, but considering that he was working on Monster Madness and putting together footage for the AVGN movie trailer and doing other numerous projects, I'm not complaining. I was just happy to see a new nerd episode again. I was going to type a comment on the video when I saw a person's username entitled James N Nintendo Nerd. I'm guessing the double N in there was since the original name was taken. The comment read E.T. and that was all, so I clicked on the name out of curiosity. It took me to a channel much like James' channel. There was one video named AVGN Atari 2600. The video had 0 views and had been uploaded today. I watched it just to be the first viewer. I really wish I hadn't done that. What happened next made me regret ever watching the AVGN. First off, there wasn't any kind of theme song whatsoever. The video just started showing James looking at the camera sadly. "You all asked for it," he said with a frown. Not the traditional mad frown, just a depressed one. "You sick pieces of filth," he continued again with a frown. I was shocked hearing him say that to his audience, not in a funny way. James then pulled out the E.T. part from its box. The camera cut to him putting the game into the Atari, the only kind of editing I saw remotely in the episode. The game started up without him even turning the system on, and he started to play. As he was playing, I swore I could hear a slight sobbing in the background. It was like he hated the game on a very personal level. For a split second a picture flashed on my computer screen. It was of the nerd bent over crying. I quickly pushed print screen. I still have the pic and I'll show it when I post this. Anyway, James only played the game for about a minute before turning the camera towards him. He had tears in his eyes, not like he was bawling, but enough that you'd notice it on his face. He held up the camera and began walking around his game room like as if it were an episode of Cops. He then found a hammer, like in his Nintendo World Championships episode, and started to break every single one of his systems and games, all while quietly singing his theme song. After painfully watching him do this, just think of all the money he wasted. He went over to his NES that he had ever since he was a child and broke it into pieces. I was almost about to leave the page when I saw him pick up a gun. It was a real gun and not a zapper or anything else. He cocked it, put to his head, turned the camera towards him, whispered, "I'm done," and shot himself. Both James and the camera fell to the ground, and that's where the video ended. I was shocked by what I had seen and I quickly left the channel and went back to the Ghost and Goblins review to try and forget about the whole event. I looked at the comments section about 10 minutes later to find that the video was gone. I even checked the James N Nintendo Nerd username. The entire account was gone too, so I didn't understand why said person uploaded it only to take it off along with his/her account all of a sudden, but now I know why James has never done an ET review. And maybe it's best he never does. Everybody knows about the Irate Gamer show here on YouTube. It was created by an Ohioan retro video game player named Chris Bors, who was inspired by early YouTube satirical retro video game reviewers such as Play It Bogart and the Angry Video Game Nerd. As someone who came to the scene later and was more than happy to wear his influences on his sleeve to the point that some jokes and other content seemed very close to the works he based his from, he has taken a lot of flack from people who take the angry game reviewing thing very seriously. Now, what a lot of people overlook is that Chris Bors is also a professional ghost hunter. In fact, it appears clear that if it would be enough to pay the bills, he'd be a full-time ghost hunter searching for EVPs in haunted locations all over the globe. Even more overlooked is the very name of Chris Bors's ghost hunting team, the Haunted Investigators. At first glance, one might just think, oh, okay, he investigates the haunted, but that name really implies much, much more, that they, the investigators themselves, are haunted. The most direct ties to the paranormal on the Irate Gamer show can be found in his Zombies Ate My Neighbors review. In it, Chris is frequently interrupted by a rambling skeleton with a thick Jewish accent and matching mannerisms named Ronnie. While it appears that Ronnie is wearing a skeleton suit, he makes it clear that he is an actual skeleton, discussing an audition to play the role of such an entity in the original Legend of Zelda. What's even creepier is that Ronnie's voice is similar in nature to Chris's, suggesting that the two are actually closely related. So, what does this all mean? Is Ronnie just Chris Boers in a skeleton suit? Is Ronnie Chris Boers' brother? A cousin, kind of like his cousin Joey character, perhaps? Or is Ronnie something else? This whole thing is crazy, you respond. The Legend of Zelda line gives the whole thing away as a joke. People or skeletons didn't audition to appear in NES games. Well, you're right. You're absolutely right. Ronnie is, in fact, no more than Chris Boers in a skeleton costume. But that's just a character on the show. Let me explain something else. On June 6, 2006, the Dayton Daily News out of Dayton, Ohio ran a very disturbing story. It was about a Caucasian man, seemingly in his 20s, wearing a button-down white-collar shirt, digging in the middle of a cemetery in broad daylight. When people asked him what he was doing, he left kind of gruffly and off-kilter, claiming that he was digging for ET Atari 2600 cartridges. In fact, in one of his videos, you can see him supposedly digging for ET cartridges in the middle of an open field somewhere. That's actually a large patch of grass, located right outside of the cemetery itself, and some say that if you look at his ET video very closely, you can see tombstones or graves that Chris attempted to use video effects to edit out, but they blended into the background so much that his video editing software just couldn't do the trick. I rewatched the video looking for them, and I saw something. But, going back to the newspaper story, there was no gravekeeper around during the time of day Chris was there. Some people considered calling the cops or perhaps the cemetery themselves, but instead one person figured he could become famous by having the Dayton Daily News come over and interview him while shooting footage of Chris. Before too long, there were two reporters, a man and a woman, present with microphones in hand, as well as a Dayton Daily News truck. So, what happened to this story? Can you find it on the internet? Well, I haven't. According to some internet forums I googled and yahooed for, something very strange happened. One of the reporters claimed that she saw Chris dig up a casket, unlock it with some kind of dull, dirty key, and then he dug up a skeleton. What happened next is unexplainable. The news crew claims that the audio and video footage just turned out to be static, like the kind you sometimes see at the end of a VHS tape. Because no one would believe that they captured all this and just suddenly somehow lost it. For paranormal reasons, perhaps. They don't talk about it much anymore. As mentioned before, they did run a story on the website, but according to the forums I've been to, everyone thought the article was stupid or a joke, so it was taken down with no trace of it ever existing. Again, I'm not saying that the Ronnie character on the Irate Gamer show is an actual skeleton. I'm just saying that sometimes inspiration comes from some rather bizarre places.
Here's what I think of Irate Gamer.